So today we are just going to take a brief overview of the tax reporting application in the Oracle EPM cloud. So just begin it. We'll look at the major functional utilities which are provided by the tax reporting software, which includes the tax automation process. So we can easily load the data from the ERP system to the tax reporting cloud services, and we can load the tax accounts, we can load the trial balance data, we can load the tax rates, the deferred tax calculation rates, and we can automate the entire tax process by the tax reporting cloud services, which helps us in calculating the tax provision, namely the current tax provision as well as the deferred tax provision. Also, we have a feature regarding the return to accrual automation through which we can automate the data which was filed through the returns, and in case there are any adjustments which are required or there are any differences between the return data and the current year provision data, we can adjust the data through the use of this application. Then we can also build up various reports, namely the consolidated effective tax report, the national effective tax report, the statutory effective tax report, regional effective tax reports as well. Another feature that the application has is the country by country reporting feature. Just a second. So, uh, yeah, we were discussing the utilities. Another feature that the application has is the country by country reporting feature, in which the global entities, the MNCs, which are required to report on this feature or report or to prepare the reports country by country, whereby they have to report all the related party transactions, the employee details, etc., in order to properly report on the transfer pricing provisions that are applicable to the entity. Then we can also calculate the interim provision calculation, which means that in case there are quarterly, monthly, half-yearly reporting in an organization or in a legal entity, the interim provision or the quarterly, monthly, or even half-yearly provisions can be calculated on the basis of the annualized estimated effective tax rates. Then we also have the net operating losses and credits automation process, whereby in case there are any losses, so we can automate the process of carrying forward or deferring or utilizing the losses or the credits which are available for a particular legal entity through TRCS. The last main feature or the major functional feature, we can say there are numerous other features as well, but the functional feature that we can discuss of is the tax account roll forward automation, through which all the tax accounts which are required to be carried forwarded to the next period can be rolled forward through this automation feature as well. So as we discussed that the tax reporting calculates the company's global tax provision, effective tax rate, deferred tax rate for the tax provisioning purposes. We can also create the data through the application for different accounting standards as well. So in case an entity is following a US GAAP accounting standards, or a particular entity is following the international financial reporting standards. So we can acclimatize both of the standards, and we can create a provision by taking all the book differences through these particular standards as well. So the process that will or the flow of the process, we can say, is that we'll load the trial balance data into the application, and then we'll input the tax rates and all the adjustments that we want or are legally required for the calculation of the current taxes or the deferred taxes. And then we can just run the business rules and see that the journal entry can be passed directly through the tax automation process. So when the corporate accounting finalizes the period and close data and all the required amounts such as the permanent and the temporary differences for the calculation of tax, the tax rates are available, the foreign exchange rates are available and are entered in the system, the tax reporting will automatically calculate the current as well as the deferred tax provisions by the legal entity as well as by the jurisdiction. So we can create that provision not only for the national domicile, but all the provisions for each and every region will also be computed and adjusted for by the tax reporting cloud services. So from the provision calculation, once the provision has been calculated, the tax reporting will produce a journal entry and will also produce the draft income tax financial statement disclosure. So all the disclosure requirements which are for there for a particular legal entity will be computed and will be produced by this particular reporting services. So we take a look at the tax provision process. So first of all, the trial balance data will be loaded or will be input in the tax automation. And from there, the provision will be calculated by entering the national and the regional tax rates. Also, in case there are any return to accrual adjustments, so there is any data from the previous year returns which needs to be input in the current year data. Just a second. So in case there are any adjustments required from the previous year returns to be input in the current year data, so we can also do that through the application. Then once this current provision has been calculated as well as the deferred provision has been calculated, we will be able to generate the various reports or the final provision reporting, namely the statutory reporting, the consolidated effective tax reporting, and the tax account roll forward as well. And from there, we can, or the application will directly create a tax journal entry in the legal entity data, and we'll be able to view the footnotes and the disclosures as well. So, so the loading of the data has to be done by an administrator. So the administrator will import the trial balance data legal entity wise. So each and every legal entity which is present in a hierarchy of an organization will have its individual data loaded by the administrator into the tax reporting application. And once the data is loaded, then the administrator will run the tax automation process by inputting various rules and the tax rates and adjustments as well. So once the data is loaded, the administrator will run the tax automation process, and the automation process will help to populate the provision schedules. So the provision will be calculated or the provision schedules will be extracted from the trial balance. And then when the automated provision schedules have been extracted, the administrator or the user can enter the adjustments which are required to be input in order to calculate the accurate or the correct tax provision. So automation can be done through the tax automation process, but in case there are any adjustments which are required, like we saw in the previous slide, the RTA adjustments, which are the return to accrual adjustments, any data which has been left out in the previous year returns, which needs to be accumulated or to be input in the current year data, we can do that manually as well. So once the automated amounts are generated, then there are data forms to include the tax rates, the adjustments for the tax, the additional tax amounts in case there are any due to rate changes, etc., the RTA amounts as well. And once the automated and the manual amounts are input, the system will calculate the final current provision, deferred provision, and it will automatically create a journal entry and will roll forward that entry to the next period. And the effective tax rate reconciliations reporting will also be generated, namely the consolidated effective tax reporting and the statutory effective tax reporting. So in the application, there are 13 predefined dimension members which are pre-built or predefined, and no additional custom dimensions can be added in this particular application. So the dimensions which are there in the application include the account dimension, which will represent the hierarchy of the natural accounts, including the tax related accounts. So the natural accounts will include the book accounts or the accounts which are there as per the IFRS or the US GAAP, whichever it is applicable to the entity, and will also include the tax related accounts, including the temporary difference accounts, the permanent difference accounts, the tax roll forward accounts, RTA accounts, and other adjustment accounts, including the loss accounts or the credits, the tax credits accounts, R&D research accounts, etc. So the account dimension will include all these. Then we have the period dimension, which will represent the time periods such as quarters and months. So in this application, the periods will be denoted by P1 to P14. So P1 to P12 will be, say, January to December, or it could be March to April as well, depending upon the financial year which the entity is following, the legal entity is following. And the P13 and the P14 will be for RTA and audit respectively. So the P13 period will be for the RTA adjustments. The RTA adjustments will be uh, input in the P13 period, and any audit related adjustments can be input in the P14 period. Then we have the consolidation dimension, which will store the intermediate results during the consolidation process. So we'll have to run the consolidation, which is a very important business rule in this application as well, because all the tax automations, the CBCR automation, RT automation, etc., are linked to the consolidation business rule. Once that particular business rule is run, then only we can see the results of all the particular automations that we have created in this application. And it is also required to see the data at the parent entity or the C level, that is the consolidated level. So there is a particular entity which has a lot of subsidiaries. So those subsidiaries will be the legal entity, and then the tax is calculated at the legal entity hierarchy level for each entity individually, and the data is then total to the consolidated parent or the C level entity, which is the parent of all the subsidiaries. So there's no separate tax calculation for the parent tax level, but all the data which is calculated entity wise or the legal entity tax calculation will be totaled and will be rolled forward or carry forwarded to the parent level. So that will also be performed by the consolidation. And the consolidation dimension will store all the results which will show the entire consolidation process when we run the consolidation business rule. Then we have a data source dimension, which will be used to store different types of input, namely managed data, data input, supplemental data as well, and some more we can create in case we are storing the data from, or we are taking the data from a specific source, so we can create a custom data source as well. Managed data will generally be used for the data management tool. Data input will be generally used for the manual input. Then we have the currency. It will store the currency or the translated value for all the entities. Intercompany dimension will store the entity members for intercompany transactions in case there are any intercompany transaction between the legal entities. So we can assign this particular attribute and the data will then be stored in the intercompany dimension. Entity dimension will represent the entire organizational structure of the company. So the parent-child hierarchy will be present in this particular dimension. The movement dimension will capture the movement details of the account. So the movement generally in TRCS, the data will be loaded in the trial balance close uh, movement. So for the tax related accounts and for the financial reporting related accounts or the book accounts or the natural accounts that we discussed of will be loaded in their specific movements, individual account wise movements. And then we have the multi-gap dimension in case there are multiple gaps which are being followed by a particular structural entity. So there is a parent entity under which there are various child or various subsidiary entities, and the different subsidiaries are following different gaps, namely US GAAP, IFRS, or any other local formats. So this particular dimension can store data in different gaps for different legal entity hierarchies. Then jurisdiction is an additional dimension for this particular application because the tax calculation takes place jurisdiction wise. So there is a national jurisdiction, then there is a regional jurisdiction as well. And the tax is calculated for both a regional jurisdiction as well as the domicile, the national domicile as well. So there is a United States, which is a national domicile, and there are regions under United States, Alabama, Alaska, New York, etc. So tax is calculated for different regions as well. And when the tax is calculated for the national region, that is the United States, the tax for each and every region will get adjusted and then the tax will be calculated for the United States domicile. There is also scenario in case we want data to be loaded for budget or forecast or any other planning uh, scenario as well. So we can load data for different types of scenarios in the application. Years will simply represent the fiscal or the calendar year. View will control the representation of data across the time period. So there is a periodic view, there is a QTD, YTD view, but generally we will use the periodic view because most of the time the periodic view will represent the tax provision accurately in the application. So point to be noted is that the additional custom dimensions cannot be created for this particular application. The roles in this application are similar to the other applications which are assigned to a particular user. So the user can be assigned a viewer role, a user role, a power user role, and then there is a service administrator. So different functions can be performed by different types of users based on their roles that have been assigned to them. So whatever role has been assigned to an individual, they will be able to perform different roles. And these roles are hierarchical. So in case in case a particular person is a user or has been assigned the role of a user, then definitely he or she can have the powers of a viewer. Or if a particular user has been assigned the role of a power user, then the user will have the access to all the functionality that a user can perform. And a service administrator can perform all the functions that a viewer user or a power user can perform. So a service administrator is the main or can perform all the functions in the application. So the different functions that can be performed include viewing data through forms, viewing data through data analytics tools, that is the ad hoc grids, the smart view, financial reporting forms, etc. Then entering the data through forms, loading the data through data management, submitting the data for approval in the approval units hierarchy, drill through the source system, consolidation of the business data, running the consolidation rule, creation and maintenance of the forms, creation of the smart view worksheets, creation and beginning or the starting of the approval process for the process control units, performing actions on the process control approval units, performing all functional activities for the application except create and assign user roles, dimension management, managing all the 13 dimensions, member formula management as well. So the dimension management is the sole responsibility of the service administrator. Member formula management is also the sole responsibility of the service administrator, and performing of all the functional activities for the application except create and assign user roles. So service administrator can perform all the functional activities for the application, but will not be able to perform the or assignment of the user roles. This will be performed by the main administrator. So there is a main administrator, then there is a service administrator. So the main administrator, which is assigned at the time of creation of the application, will be able to assign all these four roles, namely the viewer, user, power user, and the service administrator, to different individuals in the organization hierarchy. So it is important in the application that we configure the jurisdictions and the entities appropriately so that appropriate tax is calculated region-wise as well as at the national domicile level as well. So the jurisdiction dimension will have to be configured in order to calculate the taxation appropriately for the organization or the legal entity. The jurisdiction dimension defines the principal place of business for each legal entity. So the principal place of business is the place of business where the entire business operation of an organization or the head office of the organization is located for each legal entity. This dimension, the jurisdiction dimension, is used to define the nations and regions that are applicable for the tax provision. The national jurisdiction will represent a federal or a country level tax. So, as I said, it will represent a tax, say, at the United States level. And the regional jurisdictions can represent a state, a province, a territory, or any other subdivision. For the purposes of deductibility, so we'll have to deduct this particular regional tax once it is calculated for the region. Then when we are calculating the tax for the at the national level or the federal level, then we'll have to deduct this particular tax while calculating the national tax, because in case we don't deduct it, the tax will be doubled or it will lead to a double taxation at the national level. So the regional tax amounts can be set up to be automatically flow into the national calculations and can be deducted from the national calculations. Regional tax provisions can be calculated individually or in total by legal entity as well. For example, if a company is situated in USA and has multiple places of business which are its principal place of business, such as Alabama, Alaska, California, Illinois, Minnesota, Ohio, etc. So these will all be the regions, and the tax provision will be calculated region-wise for these particular regions as well. In such a case, United States is termed as the national jurisdiction and all the other states are termed as the regional jurisdiction. So there is an entire process of configuring and creating these jurisdictions. We'll have to define their names as per the ISO codes. We'll have to keep in mind that the ISO codes are followed in order to configure and to create these particular national as well as the regional jurisdictions. These will uh, see in some later sessions. So we'll now move to the application and try to see some of the and try to get familiar with the interface of the application so that uh, we can just get an idea or a broad overview about the different forms and uh, different rules available in the application through which the tax provisions are calculated. So this is my home page in the application. Here I have various clusters including tasks, operations. So we have overview and compliance in the cards under the operations cluster. Then we have the tax provision national cluster. This is a very important cluster. Most of the work which will be performed by any user has to go through this particular cluster and this particular cluster as well. So the tax provision national and the tax provision regional are my main points, or I can say the main source points whereby I can input the data, I can test the calculation of the current tax provision, I can test the calculation of the deferred tax provision, I can also automate my tax losses and view the final output as well. So I have various forms in this particular cluster, that is the tax provision national. I have an entire package. So it is again a very useful form whereby various data forms are put into at one place, whereby I can have the entire overview of the tax reporting process at a single place. So this is a very important data form for this particular application. Then we have the acquisitions form, whereby we'll input the data for any deferred tax which has been acquired by the entity. Then we have the RTA forms, whereby, as we discussed, the adjustments will be input or it can be automated as well. We have the TAR, that is the tax account roll forward form, whereby all the roll forwarded tax accounts will be available to us. Then we have the effective tax rates. So this will represent me the entire effective tax rates reports which are prepared on the basis of the tax calculation in a particular organization. We have the ETR IFRS, which will be the effective tax rate which is computed as per the IFRS. We'll have to enable this feature through the at the time of creation of application, and we can do this later on as well. Currently it is enabled. That is the reason that this particular form is available in this cluster. Then we have the fixed assets, whereby we can calculate the deferred taxes for the fixed assets, depreciation, which is charged as per the taxation, and the book accounts, that is the IFRS or the US GAAP. There is a difference in the tax rates, or the policies which are followed for a calculation of the depreciation, and because of the difference in the depreciation amounts as per the books and as per the taxation calculation, there is a deferred tax amount or the temporary difference account amount that is uh, calculated, and then the deferred tax is calculated on that particular temporary difference account. So this particular form is used to input the different balances of the fixed assets as per the tax rates and as per the financial accounting, or as per the IFRS, we can say. Then we have the data status, which will show the data status of various entities, whether the data status is impacted and what is the exact status of the current entity on which we are working. Then there are various other forms as well, other than the current tax provisions and the RT and the TR as well. So there are various other forms through which we can uh, they are very predefined forms, and we can also create the forms that we desire for, or the organization requires us to create any custom forms as well. In a similar manner to the tax provision national, there is the tax provision regional. We have the package regional, we have the acquisitions regional, RTA regional, TAR regional, ETR regional, and then we have the forms as well. So it's nothing different. It's just that this will have the jurisdiction dimension defined as regional jurisdiction, and the tax provision national will have the jurisdiction dimension defined as national jurisdiction. So the only difference will be that these are classified as national jurisdiction, and the regional will be classified as regional jurisdiction. Then another cluster that we here have is the interim provision cluster, whereby, as discussed in the slides, we have the interim provision form, whereby we can calculate the tax in the quarterly, monthly, and even the half yearly format for the purposes of the reporting in intermediate or interim reporting in an organization. We can create the interim provision, and we can use the annualized estimated effective tax rate as well. So we can get a tax rate which is estimated to be the annualized tax rate, and we can calculate the interim provision as well. The total tax plus card is here. So this will be an overview of the total tax of a particular organization through dashboards and infolets. Then another feature that is here, which has to be enabled at the time of creation of the application, is the CBCR, or the country by country reporting. So under this cluster, we have the data entry form, summary, filing, risk assessment, and the data status form. So the CBCR will be automated from the book data that we will load through the trial balance. We can automate the different accounts which are required, for which the data is required to be reported in the CBCR process. And then that particular data can be used to create the CBCR reports and CBCR filings as well. So various uh, textual data is also required to be input in this particular uh, option, that is the CBCR feature. So that can be input through the data entry card in the application. Then we have the approvals card, whereby the approval units can be assigned, created, and then they can be managed as well. So in case we want to create any approval unit for our entity, we can create the approval units here, and we can assign different approval groups as well, and then we can complete this entire approval process through this particular feature. Library will include various, or I can say the entire forms that are available in the application, the entire dashboards which are have been created in the application, the entire infolets which have been created in the application, and the other supplemental data, task manager reports as well. So the entire collection of the forms, reports, dashboards, and other artifacts as well are included in this particular library card. So this is my library for all the artifacts in the application. Then there is an application cluster whereby I have the overview card, consolidation card, whereby I can view the entire ownership structure for all the organizations in my entity hierarchy. So my parent and child hierarchy can be seen through this particular feature as well, and I can assign different ownership percentages through this particular feature. Then there are the on-demand rules in the application cluster. So on-demand rules can be created as well, and there are a lot of predefined on-demand rules as well in the application. Some of them include the consolidation, the translation rules, the tax automation calculation rules, the compute rates rules, etc. So these can be launched from this particular card. We can go to the rules card and we can launch the different rules which we want to run in the application. Then we have the task manager available here as well. So we can manage, or we can create the different tasks for the users. We can assign them to the users, and then we can perform the close process through this application as well. We can also link it by making connections with the financial consolidation and close process as well. Then we have the supplemental data card. So again, in case there is any additional information which is required to be input, or any non-financial information which is required to be created for the purpose of the tax reporting, or for the purpose of the disclosures as well, we can use this particular feature. Settings will include normal settings, configuration. So this is again very important. This is the card through which we can create the different tax automation rules, the different CBCR automation rules, RTA automation rules, input the tax rates, foreign exchange rates, etc. So this is my backend. I'll have to create the configurations for the tax calculations from here only. So I'll have to go to configurations, I'll have to define the automation rules. And once I have defined the automation rules, then I can go to the tax provision national package, and I can run the business rule of consolidation, and then can simply view the tax provision calculation and the other calculations as well. So this is my backend of the tax automation configuration process. and will include various configurations. Once we go to the next sessions, we'll look into the configurations one by one. There are numerous configurations, and all of them are very important in order to smoothly calculate the and to run the entire tax process. Valid intersections is nothing but we can define the valid and invalid intersections. Intersection will include the joining of the different dimensions or the point of view. We can see that at a particular point of view, we can either view the data, or we can set a particular point of view as an invalid point of view, so that the data will not be input at that particular point of view in the application. Data exchange is the data management feature which is available in the application. We can access it from a different tool as well, and we can access it from the application interface as well. So this is the option of accessing the data management tool from the application interface. Jobs will show us all the jobs or all the business rules that we have run, or any data load that we have performed, or any other process that is performed in the application will be checked, or can be checked through the jobs option. We can also schedule certain jobs in the application, so that the uh, some of the features in the application gets automated. We can schedule a data load job, a metadata load job, or we can also schedule a run business rule job as well through this particular feature. Then there are cell level securities. So this is again the part of the security feature in the application. We can assign cell level security, so that a particular cell at a particular intersection uh, is not accessible to a particular user or a particular power user. Then there are services and supplemental task reports. So this will help me to create the reports for the task manager process or the close process that I have created. And also it will help me to create custom reports or the customized reports for the supplemental task processes or the supplemental data which has been loaded in the application. So the next cluster that is there is the tools cluster. Tools generally includes the processes which are more related to the back end of the application again. So the variables will also variables can also be assigned, namely the substitution variables, which will help me to sort of make any changes in the normal process that is run by the application, or the default process which is run by the application. I can assign certain variables, and I can substitute those default processes by using the substitution variables. Then there are certain announcements which are frequently published by the Oracle team. So these can be accessed or viewed from the announcements card. Then the important one here is the access control. From the access control, we can assign since we are the administrator, we can assign the different kinds of roles to the user, namely user, viewer, power user, and service administrator. Navigation flows will help us to create different navigation flows in the application. Then we have the maintenance connections. Connections will help me to make connections to the different cloud services or cloud applications, namely FCCS, PBCS, EPBCS, and ARCS, etc. Audit will help me to get a trail of all the changes, or any activity which has taken place in the application. So we can track it through audit feature. We can track the task manager audit, task manager changes which are performed by any of the user to which a particular task is assigned. We can also view the audit for any other changes or any other process which is performed by a particular user in the application. Migration option will help me to take the backup of the application. The application in which I have made some changes, I have added some of the data or a metadata, I have loaded some of the data in this particular application. Now I want to take the backup of this particular application. I can simply go to migration and take the backup. Then there are certain other features as well. So an academy will again include some of the tutorial videos for the particular topic and particular new features which are generally getting added in the application. And on the next page, we have an infolet which is being assigned to this particular navigation flow. So we can assign multiple infolets on the home page itself for easy access to very important data for a particular user, power user, service administrator, etc. So we can assign an infolet, we can create an infolet and we can assign it through the navigation flow so that it can be viewed from the home page itself and we don't have to go anywhere else. So this was the entire overview of my homepage, and this was the entire overview of the tax reporting process as well. Uh, in case you have any questions, we can discuss it right now, or you can uh, connect with Mohit and discuss in case you have any queries. So in case you have any doubts, you can ask now, or we can just end the session for the day.
Hey Abdullah, this is Sandy here.
Yeah.
So, what are the prerequisites? Like, you started the whole session by getting into tax concepts, direct tax or deferred tax, and corporate tax, tax roll forward. Um, I don't know these concepts, so for me to do this training, how do I learn those concepts? Is my
No,
question.
so this is a full-fledged training, right? So this was my first session. I had to give an overview, a brief overview of these topics, that what we can do from this application. I If I go into each and every topic on the first session or in the demo as well, so it would be a Herculean task. So we will try to get into the functional aspects of each and every topic, uh, session by session wise. So we'll try to understand what is the deferred tax, what is the tax account roll forward, how the current provision is calculated. We'll try to understand as much as possible for each particular functional topic in the application so that we can get an understanding of the how the provision is calculated, how the tax is calculated for each and every legal entity, and how the deferred tax is calculated as well. So because these are generally very like we can say, and these are very elaborate topics, right? There are various accounts included in these particular tax calculations as well. So we'll have to go into the detailing for each and every topics to be correctly performed in the application.
Okay, that does answer my question to an extent. A part of my question is also like, if so you will explain, I understand, but if we have to read about it, are there any functional guides or documents, or even a separate course to understand these concepts? Like, what kind of education background is required to understand these?
See, the education background, generally it has to be finance background if you have to have the broad understanding from the beginning, right? But in case you want to get an understanding right now, so you there is no such option available by the Oracle team to help in understanding the feature in depth. Okay, so you cannot
Mhm,
understand any
mhm.
of the features in depth from the Oracle guides. You can get an overview, you can get an idea, so you can access the Oracle guides and try to understand the features, the overview of the features. Rest, it's an open world. You can access anything from Google, so you can try and learn those from there as well. But there are no specific guides or courses. So there are very full-fledged courses that I know of, which generally relates to the finance background. And I don't have any idea of any short-term courses through which you can get an idea of these particular functional topics. So because taxation is a very important subject. Okay. So
Yeah, so
you,
when you say full-fledged, can you just give an example or two, or like what kind of, I understand Oracle doesn't have these guides or these concepts explained. So, I mean, if I want to pursue that as a career, what kind of full-fledged courses, if you can give me an example or two?
so there are MBA courses, there are CA courses. Those are the only two courses that I know of.
Okay, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. That answers.
Okay, Santi. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to end the session for the day. Mohit, shall I end the session, or there are any, or should I wait for some more time? Okay. Okay, fine, guys. That's it for today. We'll hopefully discuss some more concepts in the next sessions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.